Welcome to the Goldmine Business Academy podcast. I have just one question for you. Have you ever worked so hard that your body broke down before the business did? Well, I did, and I lost my voice in the process, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. So my name is Bennett Santana. Welcome to the Goldmine Business Academy podcast, where we help purpose-driven entrepreneurs never give up and always build up. We help them rebuild their businesses with faith, system, and purpose. I've been in business for over 30 years. I've lost everything. I had to rebuild from scratch actually twice. There was one time I made 2,800 calls one summer trying to survive, and I pushed myself so hard that I actually lost my voice. I have something that's called spasmodic dysphonia, and it was because I injured my voice under stress. But one thing, I didn't give up. I found a better way to build, and one that doesn't destroy your peace and your family and your health. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about when the hustle hurts, the silent cost of overworking your body. And so let's dive into it. I'm looking forward to talking about this today. So one of the things that we have is that we kind of revolve around a lie. And that lie basically says more work equals more worth. And so, so when things are down, some folks will dig in deep and really try to work really, really hard. There's a quote by John Wooden. He says, "Don't confuse activity with productivity." That's important. Don't confuse activity with productivity. We live in a culture that glorifies the grinding. They glorify getting on the hustle bus. I did a short video and I'll show that little hustle bus here. And a lot of times we think if we get on that hustle bus, that's how we're going to really produce what we're looking for. And it does say a lot. You definitely have to work to hustle. But there's a lie. If we start believing the harder I work, the more worthy I am. And that's what happened to me, is that when things started to go down and I basically turned up the activity, and I ended up sacrificing my health. And to give you an idea, so at that time, I owned a 8,000 square foot loft. It was at West Loop. Right now, it's prime properties right next to Google and all those areas there in the West Loop area. And I was sitting there among 15 empty desks. And I would go there. Actually, I would ride my bike from the suburbs. It'd be taking an hour and a half to get down there. And then I would start making calls. One summer, I made 2,800 calls in the summer. I went through the list 2 or 3 times, and all I got was rejections. This is basically how it's set up, how I basically injured my voice by really just pushing it under stress. And at that time, the phones weren't ringing with clients. It was really creditors. And I was moving into foreclosure in that property that was downtown. And I was moving into foreclosure in my home. It's very, very, very stressful. And then one day, I woke up and my voice changed. I couldn't speak. And if you ever heard John F. Kennedy Jr. and how he speaks, he said he has spasmodic dysphonia. So I have what they call muscle tension. It's the same family. I have to have a Botox injection into my larynx. You may see it a little bit. Every 5 months, I have to do that to basically have a voice that I could speak to you today. If not, it pitches up. And on the phone, they'll say, "Hey, is this Mrs. Santana?" Because my voice would then pitch up very, very high, squeaky, almost like you're forcing it. Very hard to hear, very hard to speak. And so my voice was gone. And once it's gone, the larynx is interesting. Once it learns the injury, it stays there. This is neurological. Nothing physical wrong with my larynx. Nothing physical wrong with my voice box. It's all neurological programming. And so that went awry. The current sort of got short-circuited in there. And so the Botox gives me relief, and I am praying for a total recovery. But in the meantime, I pray that the Lord will use his voice to help others and help avoid what I went through by losing my voice. In Psalms, it says, "It's vain for you to rise up early and to sit up late and to eat the bread of sorrow." And so that's what I was eating. Was eating the bread of sorrow. The business was going down. I had lost these millions. I had to cash in my 4K. I had to cash in all that other stuff. Plus, I had my foreclosure going on in my beautiful home, and my wife, and what was going on with my family. I was definitely eating the bread of sorrow. And so he gives his beloved sleep. And that's one thing too. You end up losing a lot of sleep. That's the fact of the matter when you're in those stressful situations. And so we grind because we don't trust God will sustain us, in those times. We don't trust him. And that's the main fact of what I was going through. I just didn't trust God. I didn't trust God, and I didn't even trust in his rest, in his peace. I trusted and I jumped on that hustle bus again. Let me get on that hustle bus. That's how I know. But you know what? It's nothing wrong with the hustle bus. Nothing wrong with the hustle. As long as that hustle bus takes you to the beach sometimes, that hustle bus has to take you to a good place sometime. And so the reality is your body will speak to you. That's the reality. There's a quote. If you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. That's impactful, isn't it? And that's the true nature of our bodies. We live in this body. It's part of our threefold. We're, spirit, soul, and body, right? The soul includes your mind, will, and emotions. Your spirit, that's that inner conscious, that's that inner connection to the eternal. But then we have this body that actually is here on earth that touches the ground. And so we have to take care of it. And here's the truth. Your body is not the enemy. Your body is actually an early warning system when you have symptoms. And for me, that warning came as spasmodic dysphonia. Like I said, it's a neurological condition that damaged my voice. It damaged my voice. And so why? Because you know what? I ignored every sign of the stress, of the pain, and then pushing it, getting up early, the coffee, all those kind of things, pushing myself even to drive my bike down, ride the bike, thinking that was a way of bringing health to my body. But you know what? We have to honor God with this body, right? And that includes putting boundaries, rest, and your decisions, your business decisions. You have to include that in those boundaries, your rest, your business decisions. That includes your boundaries, your rest, and your business decisions. So what I had to do was I had to shift. I have to shift from the hustle to, holy rhythm. You don't have to kill yourself to prove your calling. That's the fact of the matter. You don't have to kill yourself. And I always talk about the 80-20 rules. It's a universal rule in accounting that you could apply 80-20 to analysis. That's what I used to do when I worked at a major corporation, just apply that, or ABC analysis, which is a modification of that. And so you look at things and say, look, what 20% effort do I have 80% impact? And that's how I started to look at things. So the day I lost my voice was the day I started listening to God. It was difficult. It was definitely difficult. I didn't believe I had spasmodic dysphonia. In fact, at that time, I had no health benefits at all. But I actually scheduled a session in the Cleveland Clinic of the Voice at the Cleveland Clinic. And I spoke with the top ear, nose, throat doctor in the United States. And he was an expert at spasmodic dysphonia and then being able to diagnose spasmodic dysphonia. And I said to myself, I'm just going to pay out of pocket. I scheduled that. I had family there. I stayed with my family and I went to talk to him and have a diagnosis. And you know what he said? Yeah, it's spasmodic dysphonia. No doubt about it. It was what he said. And so that was really heartening to me. I remember driving back and crying. It's like, how could I have injured my voice? How I wanted to use this voice to bless people. And yet I was just so concerned in building the business back up again. So I decided that day that, you know what? Two things happened at the same time. I also ended up losing my hearing. It's just kind of generic, my dad. And I said to myself, first of all, if I lost my hearing, let me have new ears to hear God speak to me. That's one thing. And two, use my voice to help others. And so this podcast is really about, if I could share my trials and my tribulations, if I could avoid someone injuring their voice or someone, avoid someone unaliving themselves, which I've had number of friends that have done that because of the business stress. That'd be worth it for what I'm doing on this podcast. It'd be just definitely worth it if just one person would be benefited from that. So what I did was I went back to what I had learned and I'd never applied. So I spent about 4 years in the E-Myth program. And the E-Myth program, what it teaches you is like a divide and define process. And I talk about that a lot of times, that, in the Genesis story, God basically said that there's light, then he divided light, and then he defined it night and day. And he did this 4 times in the Genesis story. And that gives us an example of what the E-Myth does. The E-Myth basically divides your business into 7 areas, and then you work on those areas. And so when I lost my voice and I lost everything there, I started to really start to build back up those systems. And so I stopped reacting and I started building up. The other thing that I had to do was I had to choose peace. You have to choose peace. You have to choose structure, and you have to choose to trust God doesn't need my grind. What God needs, he's your obedience. And that's the one thing is like, at that time, I'm like, I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to humble myself. Bennett had to die. Bennett Santana, he has to die to self. And to die to the pride, because a lot of the challenges that I had was how big my head was, because I had made so much money and I thought nothing could ever happen. And yet I went through that time. And it's not the trials and tribulations, that really affects a person. It's their reaction to it. And you either have a choice. You could react out of it from a good standpoint, or you could let it just consume you. And a lot of people, that's what it happens. The Bible says, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. My sister, she has a book called The Rest Quest, and she talks about the areas of rest. She's a mother of a severely handicapped child, and she found that under that scenario, a caregiver, there was no rest. There was no rest. And that's what really consumed people. And that's the fact of the matter when it comes to when you're in stress. You have to have those systems of rest. You're not called just to build. You're really called to build without breaking. And that's what you have to produce. That's who you have to be. You have to build without breaking. And the system is made for you to break down. Everything that you listen to in media, everything that you listen to, it's about breaking you down. Very little is there to lift you up. And I hope this podcast, I hope my shorts and my videos will help you lift up and help you build without breaking. And that's the whole thing. So how do you avoid this in the future? I'm going to give you 5 things that will protect your body, your faith, and your future. And here it is. It says, I want to let you know, recognize the hustle as a symptom. Just recognize hustle as a symptom. You on the hustle bus? That's a symptom. It's not a strategy. Hustle isn't in a sense hustle on your own. Right? I'm not saying, you're just trying to hustle. Hustle is actually masked for fear. That's what it is. When you have to get on that hustle bus and just hustle, right? That's masking something. You're fearful. That's what I was masking. I was masking fear when everything was going down. My P&L, went from, millions to like nothing, right? My 401k to nothing. My properties to nothing. My P&L to nothing. The stress in my body. Hey, guess what? That brings fear. Believe me. When you're facing death, you're counting sickness, you're counting the death of everything around you, including if you feel like, there's a case of where some folks that were disobedient to Moses, they got consumed by the sand. And that's how I felt. I felt the world was going to eat me up. It was just going to consume me. I was a dead man walking. In fact, people that are politicians in my city, it's so small, I'm not known, but they knew I was dead. They knew I was losing my house, right? People would show up at my house. Hey, I'll buy you this, buy you that. You weren't invited. I'm not selling anything. Why are you over here trying to lowball me on my RV? You ain't buying my RV. That's how it was at that time. Does not that produce fear? when your friends like walk away from you, they think you're a leper, that produces fear, right? And so let me just kind of tell you this. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builder's labor is in vain. And so listen to me. That's easy. God wants to design your house. He wants to build it. Things are built twice always. An architect comes in and defines the plans, and then they build it. The Lord will build that house for you. And you know what? He's speaking to you every day how to build that house. He's bringing people around you. He's bringing information around you. He's bringing podcasts. He's bringing shorts. He's teaching you how to build that house. You got to, take out that stuff, that chaff, so to speak, right? That's why I talk about the gold mine. Gold, when it's refined in fire, the impurities rises up. And it's only because of the fire that you get pure gold, right? And that's what I want to share this with you. When you do go through those problems, when you do have that symptom of the hustle, lacking a strategy, that's when you got to realize you're being refined like gold, and your mind is going to be like a gold mine, right? It's going to be like, and you're going to find gold in that. I'm just going to tell you, your blessing is in your backyard. That's what I always tell you. Your blessing, when I say in your backyard, it's in you. It's in you. You know how you have a gift. You know how you touch people. You know how people say you do this really well. You hear other people, those prophetic voices that people speak to us and say, hey, you know what? You would be good at that. That's one thing. I've interviewed many, many successful people, and I ask them, how did you get into what you're doing? You know what they say? Someone told me about it. My mother told me about it. I came out here. I saw this. I saw that. Someone confirmed it. That's why I'm here. I went to school. Now I'm practicing this, blah, blah, blah. I'm very successful, writing books and everything. Always because of prophetic voice. So I want to share that with you. Recognize the hustle as a symptom. And you know what? Hey, convert that hustle bus to like when I go camping and there's a family that converted a bus into a camper. Convert that hustle bus to a camper and take it on a peace ride. That's what I want to share this with you. Second, you need to build systems that protect you. That's, it says, think about the system that God gave us. God gave us 6 days you shall labor, but on the seventh, there's a Sabbath. You know what? There's a rest. And so he divided the week into 7 days, right? But on the 6th day, 1 day you rest. He created a system, and systems are about stewardship, right? You create a system, it's about stewardship. You document that system, you lay that out, you make it automatic so it's repetitive, so that it delegates automatically all the tasks that need to be done, and it protects your life, your calendar, so to speak, and you got to build the systems. And that's something we're going to cover in a lot of the podcasts. I have multiple ways to build systems for you. Let me just share a couple. One, you divide up the business into 7 areas, right? Real quick. Lead generation, lead conversion, client fulfillment, marketing, money, management, leadership. Then those 7 areas, you basically build directories in your computer with those 7 areas. Let's say you name your company Inc., and underneath that in your directory, you have those 7 areas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You do that in your email system. You do that in your filing system. And you teach your people about those 7 areas. And so then when you talk about something, you could say, hey, what are we talking about? We're talking about area 4, marketing, right? We're talking about money today. And so you know exactly, that's one simple system that you could build. There's other, let me show another brief one that I'm going to cover in detail in another podcast. It's communication system. You know what? There's 7 different conversations. Conversation for rapport. That's first conversation where you're getting to know someone. Conversation for possibility. That's a conversation of brainstorming, throwing out, blue skying, writing it down. Conversation for opportunity. This is strategic and tactical. This is where you talk about what should go next. How long, 3 years, 1 year, 1 month. That's strategic and tactical. Conversation for that, after that is conversation for action. That has certain rules. Most people don't even know the rules about conversation for action, yet we operate them. We operate in them. The domain of trust, which is an assessment of competence and sincerity. The next conversation is a conversation for breakdown. No one even probably has a system. Our company has 2 or 3 systems for breakdowns, opportunity for improvement, corrective action team, CAP process. These are what to do when someone calls and complains. You'll see it in major corporations. You walk into Dunkin' Donuts, they'll have a letter like acknowledge, accept, something like that. That's a conversation for breakdown. Next one is conversation for acknowledgement. This is where you acknowledge people and raise them up, giving them affirmation. Like if you were speaking to a plant. Listen, I speak to my plant. Sometimes I go on vacation. I come back. The plant's nearly dead. I said, I apologize. I'm watering you right now. I need you to come back to life. I apologize. I was out. And you know what? My family members didn't take care of you. I apologize. And the last one is conversation for wholeness. That's making yourself whole. That's understanding who you are as a person. And that conversation for wholeness is the most sacred conversation you could have with a person. And I have those conversations a lot with people about, things that could help them make whole. Because you know what? Sometimes the world just makes us like a jigsaw puzzle and we can have pieces that are missing. It says a man of understanding draws it out. In the Bible, it says that you could get help for people to help draw out those situations. Listen, I'm going to tell you, I ended up having a bad alcohol habit, a bad cigarette smoking habit. In fact, the alcohol actually, I ended up injuring my liver. I have fatty liver. I had a scar on my liver. And it was because of the alcohol. You know what I was doing? I was suppressing issues that I had to deal with and forgiveness, suppressing it. My whole 20s, from 20 to, let's say 20, it was just suppression. It wasn't until, listen, I tell my daughters, forgive me now, or you're going to do a year and a half of therapy, but then you're going to forgive me. Either one is good. I ended up with therapy for a year and a half. It really helped me before I even came to know the scriptures and get that healing from that. But this is something that you have to have in your life. You got to build those systems, that conversation of wholeness. That's just two examples that I want to share with you. How to protect you. This is just two examples. Now, you got to make rest a system. It's not a reward. Right? A lot of times we do, I'm going to rest when I finish this. I'm going to rest when I get this. That's a recipe for burnout, right? If I had a sheet of paper and just lit it on fire, so I got to work to reward. No, rest has to be built in. God said, seventh day is rest. You got to build that in. I have an RV. And you know what? During those hard times, I took a trip with my daughters, my wife, to Mount Rushmore. And in the clarity of the Badlands, if you've ever been up there, it's so beautiful. It took my mind off of things. It connected me with my daughters. It's one of those trips of a lifetime. We did it in the midst of the trials and tribulations. And I thank God I had an RV because I just had to pay for the camping site. And I was able to manage it even though we didn't have any money. But we had a great, wonderful time. And when on the way back, I came back and I said, what am I doing? I'm killing my cash cow. I'm killing business, it used to be called business systems or business staffing of America. I'm killing it, trying to hold all these properties. $6,000 a month for my home, right? $13,000 a month for the property that I had downtown. $20,000 a month. I'm like, I'm killing. How far can I go with this burning cash like that? No way. When I came back in that rest, I said, no, I'm going to protect my cash cow. And that's one thing I want to share with you. I hope anybody's out there, protect your cash cow. Get rid of the other stuff that just leeches on your cash cow and just takes that. You got to protect the cash cow. And the reason why I'm successful now is because I protected my cash cow, and you got to do that. That thought process happened in rest. The Sabbath is a command. It's not a luxury. A lot of people think it's a luxury. No, the Sabbath is a command that we got from God. Hey, rest on that seventh day. So, and I'll tell you, hey, I encourage you, go find a place of worship. I don't care what it is. Your synagogue, a mosque, a church. Go find that place on that rest day, whatever that day is for you. Find that rest. Guess what? You get some free consulting in this sense. Right? There's going to be a guy who studied all week to get you a message that's going to benefit your mindset. And I'll tell you, this is a way to avoid burnout. Think about this. I always think about, like, when you get in road rage, you get into road rage with a guy who has or a girl who has trauma. Guess what? People who don't have trauma, they're not going to be yelling at you. This is what? That trauma in rest, that's where you get healed from that. You got to get healed from all this trauma. The other thing is you got to stay accountable to wise people. You got to have someone that says, hey, how's your business? How's your health? And that's why I'm creating a community that we could ask each other, how's your health? How's your business? How are you doing? And we could stay accountable to other wise people. And so that's something that I'm building. I spend thousands of dollars an hour to talk to people with wisdom to help me with my business. And so you can't be afraid to pay money for it. You know what it says? Wisdom says you got to buy wisdom in the Bible. Solomon, listen, he had like a training company and he would make a yearly subscription. So what I'm saying this is to you is like, you got to find wise people. They're not going to always be free. They're not. I'm sorry. Because those people who are wise spend millions of dollars on training, and then you expect to get that advice for free? No, that's a freeloader. That's a freeloader. Don't expect anything for free. Don't. And you know what, kings, whether you're a woman or a man, you're still a king. Kings, you know what? They fight for the check. They don't let to be under the account, right? In other words, that you're in debt with someone. Kings already know it's like, hey, if I get something good, I'm going to reward. The Bible says, hey, there's a prophet's reward. There's a concept. And listen, let alone, you go in the mob, you better bring something to the Godfather, right? So just remember, stay accountable with the wise people. Don't be afraid to pay them for that advice. Don't be afraid. That engage, you'll put in a law of sacrifice, because when you do something without sacrifice, there's no value, right? I've given away 3 Sequoias. I've had 7 Sequoias. I love those cars. And I gave away 3, and those 3, they didn't exist within a year, the ones I gave away, because there's no law of sacrifice. Number 5, listen to your body. Listen to your body, right? Don't ignore any pain. Don't ignore any symptoms. Don't ignore the desire to sleep. Don't ignore any of that, right? You know, you got to listen to that body, and you got to be concerned, and you do need to basically, listen, get that yearly checkup, right? Measure whatever your weight, whatever things that you could figure out how to measure for yourself. Measure it. Measure your weight. Measure your calories. Measure those kind of things. Whatever you're interested in, that's where you produce results. Don't ignore the body. I had a brother-in-law who basically, he was always chugging on water. But he never went to see the doctor when he went to see the doctor, it was after he had a stroke, and by that time it was late. It had too much of a damage on his heart. And so on his mind, or whatever is going on with him. But don't ignore that. That's what I want to share that with you. Listen to your body. Get those regular checkups. Get that reassurance. Take that blood test. Do those exams, whatever, when it comes to 50, there's exams that women and men should take, respective exams. That's what I just encourage you. Listen, if you're listening to this and you're pushing hard, so hard that you're falling apart, I just want to say this to you. There's a better way to build up. There's definitely a better way to build up. You know, at the Gold Mine Business Academy, this is where we help transform entrepreneurs. We help them transform their mindsets. We help them scale their systems, scale their business. And ultimately, we want you to thrive in your family, your faith, and your purpose. So if this talk blessed you, please share it with someone else who might be burning out in silence. And this is Bennett Santana. I just wanted to let you know, never give up and always build up. Thanks again.